You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matt Weiss. And today in studio, we have another marvelous Matt, one of Durham fame. You might know him. You might have even tasted his food if you've gone to Mateo's or Van Rouge or Mother's and Sons or had a bowl of matzo ball soup at Lucky's Deli. The one, the only, marvelous Matt Kelly.
Hello. Good morning.
Welcome, and welcome to podcasts. Welcome to what this is. I guess, Matt, this is your first podcast that you've been on?
This is definitely my first podcast, and thank you for having me.
And now might even give you cause to listen to a podcast.
Yeah,
maybe.
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, we are definitely excited and happy to have you on. I know we've... I'd love to have had you on the show for so long because you are a story that has yet to be told in full evaluation, if you will, on the NCF&B. But you are kind of the epicenter of a lot of fantastic things that happen in Durham, and you participate in so many great things as well. As Matt just mentioned in the opener, all the restaurants that you run or have been tied to. The one that he didn't mention, and let's just jump right in, is St. James, because St. James is currently not open at this very moment, but it sounds like you are ready to open in January of 2020. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
We're pretty excited about it. It's been a couple months.
It's been since April 10th, 2019, since you've been closed. I mean, I could tell you, the listeners, what happened, but maybe you just help us walk through as far as why St. James is not open right now.
Sure. So on that day, in April 10th, there was a gas explosion in my neighborhood that just temporarily disassembled everything and put everything to a halt. And unfortunately, there were a couple lives lost, and there are some pretty traumatic, severe injuries, and it was a really intense scene.
Yeah.
And forwarding 7 months later, we were really focused on the rebuilding aspect and, looking for some normalcy. And, when people say St. James, I'm just one, small cog in a machine that involves a lot of other small business owners, restaurant owners, other places that were other businesses, functions that were displaced. TUCAD rented some space in the area. They were displaced. The businesses that were there and that didn't close down were displaced.
Yeah.
And, after the smoke clears, people forget, and you've changed patterns, the way you move. Like that incident has changed the patterns of the way Durham moves, especially 2019.
Yeah.
And that's, when you have a permanent location, you rely on that. Like you expect that traffic, you build that traffic, you earn every person's foot who comes through that door. And I know how challenging it is because that's my job. That's a big part of my job.
Yeah.
And to be able to hear and speak about the Brightleaf community and the small businesses in that area, and that they're ready for people to come back for Christmas shopping, to grab a beer at the Fed, to hang out at Parker and Otis, to get some tacos at Torero's. Those are things that the normalcy that, that was disrupted, and people are just really, they're going to be really excited. I'm particularly excited about Torero's because that's just our neighborhood Mexican spot and on the corner, and it's been open 25 plus years.
Can I say one thing that as living here for going on 4 years now, until about 2 weeks ago, I had never walked through Brightleaf Square, that little like outdoor shopping area, because I didn't know about it, because nobody tells you that there's 4 parking spots right there, aside from like all the great food and all the traffic there.
No.
But there's 4 public parking spots that you don't have to pay for.
Wait, spots or lots?
Lots.
Oh,
yeah. So, not 4 spots. Sorry, 4 parking lots right around there that nobody knows about.
Matt's always looking for free parking. That's like
I am
literally that's the most exciting thing about his day.
I think that's like the Dwight Gooden baseball card from 1984. Good luck with that.
Yeah. It's true. Well, when you as everybody who listens to the show knows that when you work a day job and you're driving all around and you're spending a ton on parking, it's a nice thing to find.
People appreciate free parking.
Yeah,
like it's one of those. It's a deal.
Right.
At this point, people are like, "Oh, it's free parking." You're like, "It's $1." I don't know. And you're like, you're about to spend $17 on a martini.
But the parking, it's like the George Costanza philosophy.
Very
I know,
Costanza.
But it's also a great thing to find a toilet, a public toilet that's really nice and clean.
Yeah.
So,
listeners, only 17 more minutes on free parking, and then we'll get back
toilets.
to the subject matter.
No, but the point being is that Brightleaf Square is this really cool place.
That's amazing.
Additionally, they have a lot of free parking.
Well, Matt, as you were saying, Matt Weiss, you are in outside sales and you cover the Durham area. And I remember specifically on April 10th, you called me because I was here in the studio. I think I was recording maybe with the Holderness. I remember just finishing recording, and I saw your phone was like, you text me a few times. You're like, dude, do you know what's going on right now? And when I called you, you were like blocks away, or might have, I think,
I was a couple blocks away, yeah.
It looks like a bomb went off, and essentially it's kind of what happened effectively.
Pretty big one.
Yeah. I mean, for those that are not in this area and are curious, you can obviously Google Durham Explosion 2019, and you'll see a lot of video and a lot of, it's pretty horrific what happened. And some buildings that once existed are just completely leveled to the ground and are no longer there. And as Matt Kelly also said, that a couple people lost their lives, and it's no light. We wanted to mention it. We wanted to talk about it up front because we know everybody was probably curious about what that meant and how that pertained to not just you, Matt, but also all the business owners in the area. But moving forward, now many months have gone by. Your place has been closed down, and Torero's as well has been closed down.
Correct.
Not to connect everything back to me, but Matt, you and I know each other because there was a time when we talked about maybe even me being a part of the team and helping out with St. James when it was first getting started. This is back when it was the old Fishmongers building. It had been there. Fishmongers has been there for like 30 years or something.
Correct.
Prior to you taking it over, and then the renovation process was quite extensive. And that's kind of where I had jumped in. I was just leaving Midtown Grill. The podcast had just gotten started. And it was kind of a wild influx time. When I got the call from you, which was random, it was like you and I maybe had met once or twice just in public at some event. And you're like, hey, man, we should get to know each other or something, and like you should come by and chat it up. I was like, oh, shit, like I have arrived. Matt Kelly called me to like talk about maybe doing something with the restaurants. And for anyone who doesn't know, like seriously, it would be a huge honor to work with Matt. And we got to the Fishmongers building and kind of saw like what could be. And I just want to ask you, because I'm watching you, and I told Matt Weiss, I keep using both of your last names because I don't want to confuse people. So I'm telling Weiss over here that first day we walk into Fishmongers, you're there with the designer, GC, maybe the architect, people in your crew. And I have never met anyone that was more decisive and knew what he wanted up until that point. I mean, we walked into that place. You had it locked down in your brain and also maybe on some paper somewhere, but you weren't even going off of paper. You just knew what you wanted, and we were going from room to room to room. And it was like I kind of understood why Matt Kelly knows what he knows and what he does, both in the culinary state but also just hospitality and design of a restaurant. Where does all this come from? How did you get to that point?
Kids, put stuff on paper. You have an imagination.
Yeah.
And you follow your imagination. It usually brings you to great places. It's not a secret.
Yeah.
But
I think people just forget. Taking your imagination and sharing that with a team and becoming aligned and like moving forward and having progress and building on that imagination. That's a very different
skill set.
Yeah. Which I'm still developing that skill set, and I'm comfortable with that. I think my team is comfortable with that because after you work with me for a little bit, you understand where that there's an imagination, but there's not necessarily the direction or tons of pre-planning. It's like when it's go time. Yeah. This is what we're looking for. We have these plans. You have a set of directives. I really like to empower the team and have them move forward. And the alignment's really important, but I think empowerment of the individual and having them grow and developing their own leadership skills and brand, I think, is something I really look forward to when I'm working with someone, especially at like the upper management level. I really want to see them develop.
Yeah.
And you can hint here and here, you can give advice and this, but that individual and how they lead their team and how they develop as a leader is, it takes practice every day and insight and looking back and looking at situations that you're involved with and constantly, how could I have done this better? Or also looking at things that you've done really well. And the idea of that level of leadership is just like like being on yourself. It's like kind of learning an instrument, a guitar.
Yeah.
Did you have a mentor that kind of empowered you that you've modeled yourself after?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I worked with a lot of different chefs and managers that were really about empowering their team and pushing their team to new levels, to develop skill sets, to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with, I was very fortunate. I worked with a great group of people. Oh, yeah, I can name. Yeah. I mean, one that probably Johnny Wright from Glenwood Grill.
Oh, yeah.
He was a great. He was great with me.
The place doesn't get mentioned enough on this show, but that's a cool spot, and it's been kind of legendary.
It's a stalwart. It's been there forever.
Yeah.
Winston's Grill.
Mm-hmm.
That whole team, Guy Branham and Will O'Neill. They were. Oh, yeah. I could tell you a great story about Will and creme brulee, and that was he managed that really well. But there's situation. I mean, Patrick O'Connell, my sous chefs at the Inn at Little Washington, my friends and colleagues like AC. When she started, we were both really green.
Yeah,
and we would call each other and to figure out solutions to issues that would come up, or like how do we push ourselves? How as young leaders, 20 years ago, how do we develop? How do we look into the inside of our team and balancing a business and cooking and so forth? So,
which is crazy when you say that about that amount of time, because you're a relatively young person, but you've been running restaurants for a time now. So Vin Rouge, you
2005.
were the chef, and then you started to partner with Vin Rouge. Is that correct? Like you took some ownership? Is that?
I mean, the ownership. So like ownership is the tough part. No, I was a chef and just wanted to cook, and I just moved and I'd worked some relay and chateau properties, some kind of higher end restaurants, and I figured that to have a balanced life and to give that your all was something that I was pondering, and I said, I'm going to try a French bistro. I'm a Francophile, like a good steak frite, good salad lyonnaise, good French onion soup, good pâté, good moule frite. I don't think anything can ever beat that for me,
Yeah.
And I said, what happens if I took the skill sets that I learned at these high-end restaurants and just practice it every day in a simple kitchen, very straightforward kitchen, and having a conversation about, French bistros, more traditional style, And at the time, El Bulli was coming out, and at those other restaurants, we started using, all the additives. And I was more of the Alice Waters style, like, let's see what we can take away instead of putting in.
Molecular gastronomy.
Yeah, totally, that stuff.
Powders
and I think it has its place, and I think I'm more interested in now than I was a long time ago. But being a chef, I really wanted to have my base and my foundation covered before I moved on and doing things before you had the basics covered. Yeah. Like moving too fast forward, There was a cheese company, Old Chatham Cheese Company, and I always appreciated one of their sayings. And it wasn't about, sayings. It's always like moving forward, looking forward to the future. It's like turning the clock back in cheese making. And like that speaks to me. Yeah. To me, like that's a romantic saying. But I think back to leadership, we were talking about, people inspire. I think for me, I can talk about the professional side and working with great managers, but I think my family is something that has always inspired me. Seeing my uncles and my grandfather, both my grandparents, working, seeing my grandmothers, taking care of family and working, and talking about how hard you're working when you're doing something in the yard. My dad, had 3 jobs. He was as pilot, Air National Guard in the Air Force. It was just like that was something that was ingrained in my mind, was having a good work ethic and treating people fairly and treating people equally. And that, I think that was probably laid one of my strongest foundations, was my family.
So let's take a quick break from today's show to talk about our new sponsor on the podcast. It's the Butcher's Market. Matt, there's a Butcher's Market in your neck of the woods. There's a Butcher's Market in my neck of the woods. And it kind of makes sense for them to join up with what we do because, of course, it's a North Carolina-based company, but more importantly, it's about people. It's about building a culture. You can buy your steaks wherever you want to buy them, but when you know where the sourcing is and you know the person that's handing it to you, they can help you figure out tonight's meal, or they can just help you figure out what you're actually putting into your bodies. That's why the Butcher's Market's here.
Yeah, and they have locations in Holly Springs, they're in Cary, they're in Raleigh, and soon to be in Bedford. And I got to tell you, my kid loves hot dogs, but he loves the Butcher's Market hot dogs. So it's so convenient. Go there, buy a couple of hot dogs. My wife loves the burgers. They're already prepared, already seasoned. All you literally have to do is throw them on the grill, and voila, you have an amazing meal, because you can also buy prepared vegetables too, which are great and seasoned, and you just throw those in the oven for a little while, and you have an awesome meal. You didn't spend a lot of money, and you didn't have to work that hard for it.
That hamburger blend is chuck, ribeye, and a little bit of brisket. It's like an 85%, meaning you get a little bit of fat content, and that's where the flavor is, man. That's where the flavor comes from.
Which one is that called?
That's their Butcher's Blend.
So for those of you that are looking to break into the restaurant industry or kind of pivot from where you've been in the restaurant industry, the Butcher's Market is a great venue for that. It's quality of service, quality of people, plus you get to do both, where you get to learn how to be a butcher, or maybe you already know how to be a butcher, but maybe you've had that kind of feeling that, I'm a front of the house person, and you like and enjoy speaking with people. Well, here you get to speak to people as well, and you get to get excited about the flavors going on in the meats, and get excited about how you prepare it, what sauce you might use, what temperatures you might use. Interaction, quality of life, quality of employment.
So for more information, go to thebutchersmarkets.com. That's butchersmarkets.com. Remember, the Butcher's Markets, they're your neighborhood butcher and specialty grocer, providing our guests with premium meats, local products, and excellent hospitality every day.
And I think also probably one of the best examples of empowerment is mothers and sons, because Josh DeCarolis, who's a chef, you brought on not only as the chef, but as your partner in that.
Yeah, I mean, Josh leads that. And, when we interviewed, I was about almost 9 years ago, I said, he wants, I was like, your last name is DeCarlis. You love Italian food. Like, you've cooked me a bunch of Italian food for the job for Matteo. Why aren't you working at an Italian restaurant? And he was like, well, there's there's nothing here at the moment that really speaks with me. I said, okay. And he's like, but that's something I want to do in the future. And I never forgot that. And, that guy gave me everything he's got and still does to this day, and so appreciative. And he's more than a part. I mean, that's his, that's an extension of Mothers and Sons and is an extension of Josh DeCarlis.
Yeah. And now even to a bigger validation of that point is that he's opened now his own butcher inside of Transfer Co. And
Alimentari, yeah.
The Alimentari. We're rubbing on some meat right now.
Yeah. And that's what
good.
this is. All right, I'm going to grab a little piece here. So, Matt kindly provided some ridiculous meats over here, and so if you haven't gone to Transfer Co. and gone to Alimentari, you got to check it out because Josh is there, Aaron Hopp is there. Aaron and I used to work together for a little bit while he was at the butcher at Standard Foods, and they are killing it. He just got married too, so life is going well for Aaron. Excuse me to my wife while I eat this food on Mike.
And while you go eat that food on Mike, I'll tell you where after you get your butcher meats at Transfer Co., go get yourself some wine to pair with it at one of the 4 locations of the Triangle Wine Company, who are great friends of ours. They're in Cary, right next to the Whole Foods. They're in Morrisville. They're all the way out in Southern Pines. And as I love, they're in my backyard in Holly Springs. As you guys know, the Triangle Wine Company will deliver to your home. They have all sorts of wines and great selections of beers. They have great tap rooms right within their facilities. They're very knowledgeable. And if you use the NCFB promo code, you will get a nice discount as well. So go to trianglewineco.com to visit them online or go to one of their 4 locations, and you will drink merrily.
Thanks, Matt. So this was an interesting time in my life and career, was that I had this opportunity to potentially work for Matt Kelly at a brand new restaurant. We basically were going through the steps of making that happen, and then I think it kind of came down to St. James build out unfortunately was just taking a really long time. Like probably 8 to 10 months longer than you would have liked or cared.
It always happens that way.
Exactly. And everyone that's ever built a restaurant
feels so inadequate.
Exactly.
I think every restaurant person just wants that place built.
Well, it's the old adage that if somebody tells you, oh yeah, we're going to open in June, you say, okay, so January.
Yeah.
It's always at minimum 6 months delay.
Truth.
So I remember actually walking into Mothers and Sons in the daytime, and Josh DeCarlis is sitting there making pasta as he does throughout the day, fresh rolled pasta, everything handmade for the evening service. And Matt Kelly and I, we were sitting at a big table, and I felt so shitty. I'm about to tell a guy that I wildly respect, and this position that I could potentially take may change my career for the better, that I'm not going to take this position because I need to get paid and I have a family to support. I was like, oh, fuck, I don't know what to do. Standard Foods came up to me and offered me a job, and I'm like, Matt, I'm going to take this job at Standard Foods. Do you remember what you told me when I said this?
No, I can probably tell you it was running through my head, but it's probably better than you. Yeah, I
seem to remember you saying, "Why?"
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right.
And, it was a tumultuous time. And having already not worked with you, but getting a little bit of your wisdom there, I should have probably taken it. Because the amount of time I worked there, St. James, by the time I was done, St. James hadn't even opened yet. I could have probably called you back up and went, hey, man, that experiment that I tried over at Standard Foods didn't quite work out. Could I get a job? But at that time, what was really great was this podcast was actually kind of being born, and this truly is what I love to do. And so
you wouldn't have become a world famous podcaster.
Oh, no regrets. You got to move forward.
No, so all those steps made it all excellent. I actually heard rumors of people thinking that I purposefully quit early so that I could go back to work with you. And I said, well, you're going to find out when time rolls out that I'm not a part of the St. James opening team. But that's where I met Aaron Hopp, and a really good guy, and I met amazing people that were working there at the time. And that's been an excellent connection. I do remember, and I got to ask you, because we brought it up when we interviewed with Mike Maller.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because I was going to are you going to forget that?
It was I always love telling tale of great interview questions or things that happened. Do you remember that when you were interviewing me, we were in the roof or the second floor of Mateo, and you had kind of a team of your team. Mary was there, and Matt was there. Or even Michael was there. There's about 4 people interviewing me, and I couldn't shut up talking. I was just, as you know, and as the listeners are hearing now. But you asked me, it's the last question of the interview, how I would clean this table of which we were sitting at. What was going on with that question?
It's a very simple task that should be done well every day. And when you're hiring a manager, not only should they know how to clean a table, but they should know how to instruct someone on how to clean a table. But cleanliness, I mean, there's multi-parts there.
Yeah.
It's something you put your hands on. Your guest, everyone that's going to walk in that building. Like, it's a little sacred.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being ridiculous, but like you're going to sit there. It's just, it's everything with intention and, you know, walk in clean, fresh, new, inspire younger people who are working for you how to clean, how to make things proper. So when a guest comes in, which we're humbled by, who's going to, you know, we're going to exchange money for food and the opportunity to practice our craft, let's give them a clean setting.
Yeah. I don't know how. I don't expect you to remember my answer, so I'll just tell you. When you asked me that question, I was so taken aback because we were talking about, you know, like openings and hiring and strategies and P&Ls and all these things. And then at the end, you asked me this question, which was so straightforward that I was like, okay. All right. I would find a clean towel. I would either use the sanitation buckets that we have over to the side or spray it with something, but not on the floor. I'd spray it somewhere inconspicuous and then come out, wring it out, and then come to the table and wipe the table down and walk away. I don't know how you felt about that answer because I walked out there going, "What just happened?"
Yeah. I mean, it's simple tasks every day. It's like the omelet. You ask a cook to make an omelet or a chef to make an omelet when you're hiring them. It's one of the. I mean, I had to do that at the inn. You know, there's I think per Danielle does that, and a couple other individuals. But yeah, it's a really good gauge to see where this person has eaten, where they have learned to make the omelet, how they've learned to crack the eggs. I mean, it's everything you do. When you get to a certain level of profession, you can look and analyze it to a degree that is not healthy.
Yeah.
And
your actions speak louder than words at that point, right?
And everything.
Yeah.
The way everything. And that's just something to look at, and you know, look how people respond. Look how your eyes move. Look how your eyebrows move. Then look at the final execution and be happy and thankful that someone came in and spoke with you, interested in working with you and giving you the time. Like that in itself is, I don't know, that's something I'm humbled by.
So is that to say that there's not like an ideal answer for that? It's merely just like a gauge of the response?
No, there's a lot. I think there's not one single answer. How someone has been taught in the past might not necessarily be the way I teach them to do something.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean, you know, at the time when we have policy, that is our policy is what rules.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean we're not interested in other policy or how things are done in the past to get to, you know, our final destination, or just gauging like what level we're working at, you know.
Right.
It's really to see like, you know, how it's the first conversation of like being aligned with management or team.
Yeah, like first day to day.
Yeah. And I use these like broad terms, but like they go back and forth between kitchen, cooking, and you know, front of the house, but it's everywhere. Whether you work at a shoe store or you work in a law firm. I mean, people pay attention.
Had I said I would find the nearest backweight or busboy and delegate them to do it and clean it.
That's a great answer.
Okay.
I think that's a great answer.
Or I'm thinking if somebody had said, well, I'm glad you asked that because we had a very specific way in said restaurant in my last job, and this is how we cleaned it there. That would have been a good answer, too.
That would have been a good answer. There's a lot of good answers.
I didn't get thrown out of the interview at the end, so that was good. So.
Yeah. How would you grade Max's response?
It's how you say the answer.
Right. The confidence of you say, yeah. I was thrown, not just to segue for a second, I don't know if you remember this, Max, and I think I've talked about it in the show, but I was thinking about moving back to LA and taking a wine director position at the BLT on right on Sunset Boulevard in LA. And the interview was going well, or at least I thought, and I was just in for the weekend, so I really felt pressure to nail it. And the guy asked me, first day, you get the job, you come in, what do you do? And I said, well, the first thing I would probably do was conduct inventory, so I knew what was coming in, what was going out. But he kept saying, but what's the first thing you do? I said, well, I'd look where you see the inventory sheets and the Excel spreadsheet. No, but what's the first thing you do? And I still to this day cannot figure out what he was getting at. Like, did he mean I put my coat down? Like, is it the simplicity of that? Or I'd open the door? I still cannot figure out what he was looking for.
Are you asking?
If you have some insight, I'd love to know.
Matt knows the answer.
There's a couple of things. I wasn't that gentleman, but I think shaking hands, saying hello, introducing, smiling, breathing.
Being in the moment. I think
that's like my friend Van would say, but like absorbing and introducing yourself and
being conscious of like the moment and the surroundings you have.
Yeah.
And just embracing, like, okay, you're here now.
Which is something you would probably do naturally.
Right.
Because a lot of it comes out of habit. When you're put on the spot in that question.
Overthink it.
Yeah, or you're just like, you think very job.
Yeah, task
oriented. This is what we needed. This is what I don't feel comfortable with because I don't know anything. I do know how to say hello and introduce myself. I am very nervous about. I'm just thinking about the inventory too for that place. I was like, how much wine does the BLT on Sunset Boulevard sell in LA?
Yeah, a shitload.
It's embarrassing. All right, I want to get back into St. James because, man, I was preaching the gospel about St. James in anticipation of it opening from the perspective that you had shown me. Like, hey, man, this is going to be this. What I do like is being that there are essentially two floors, like you have an upstairs back room and then downstairs. I remember you saying at the time, decor-wise, or just like the way it was going to look, you're like, picture this downstairs area kind of like the outside of not necessarily a boat, but like the boating area, like its coastline. It's like what you'd expect like an old sea captain's boat area to be. Contrasting, going up the stairs would be like going into his poop deck, his private like quarters. Am I right by saying that roughly?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, when we design places, we like to have different dynamics for different diners.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say our space, like we have, when you have a restaurant, there's places that are developed that some guests won't sit anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the other guest, this is the worst table in the house. Right. I don't know why anyone would ever sit here, but you have a contrast of, both thoughts and opinions. And with St. James, we had two different dynamics, an upstairs and a downstairs. Downstairs, I wanted it to be a little bit quieter. I wanted to be like a normal restaurant.
Yeah.
We're just sit down. There's a table of 4 and order off a regular menu. There's no small plates. There's nothing coming at you. We're not like this is just a regular traditional
entree, maybe
seafood restaurant. Please come in and enjoy your meal and your experience. And that, with the downstairs, that's what was developed. We have a fairly large bar with an open raw bar. I thought that was a really crucial element. We usually have open kitchens. Being someone who started in the kitchen, that's just a really important focal point for me. And I think, You get to vibe off the energy in the dining room. I know our team gets to vibe off the energy in the dining room, and vice versa. It's also like in an economy, it's something the way it works. Like it's less, you lose less square footage in your lease when you have an open kitchen. Sure, so it's not just, it's not design should be very functional in all aspects, not just Instagrammable.
Yeah. So that brings me to an interesting point, because at this point in your career, we've asked Ashley this question as well, and you guys are in similar trajectories on that sense. At this point, are you a restaurateur more or a chef?
Well, first, that's a really nice compliment.
Well, I mean,
that's what they see.
No, I mean, she deserves it. I mean, look, Ashley is nationally recognized, but in the triangle, many people can say Ashley Christensen is to Raleigh as Matt Kelly is to Durham. I mean, seriously, you do a lot for your local community, and you are synonymous with the food culture of your city.
And I also don't remember a time, and I know you guys are buds anyway, but I don't remember a time where, like, speaking with Ashley, where she hasn't mentioned you in the same regard. So, anyway, but back to the original question.
So, I would have answered that question, I guess, pre-explosion very differently than I do now.
Okay.
I think, like, pre-explosion, we were working on a couple projects. I mean, we were working on a lot of projects. Some that were, like, very restaurateurish, and some that were very chef-driven. And my joy is more chef-driven projects, and the restaurateur version is more, I don't know if the right word is safeguarding, but investing in people that have been with you for a long time, because it's time for them to do and take the next step. And that's where we were. And all that conversation takes a long time. So that when the explosion happened, that really put everything stopped.
Yeah.
Everything stopped. Any type of movement, any type of growth, even like spending. I mean, you just don't, because you don't know. You don't know anything when something like this happens. The first person you call is your family. Let them know you're okay. I think it was the first time I've posted on something on Facebook in like 3 years, because the influx of incoming, and I was just, I just need a vehicle to tell people, like, our team is okay, we're safe, I'm safe, and that was, and then to handle the situation that was going on at the moment. But you don't know. And like in terms of reopening, we thought we could open for graduate. You just don't know. You rely on so much third party work, and you're relying on third parties you don't even have a conversation with. I've never even spoken with anyone who's ever actually given me permission to move forward in the progress. It's kind of
just the unknown.
In terms of leadership and how that works. It's actually one of those things where it's out in the cloud, not on the cloud on the internet, but it's out there, and then you eventually get this message. You're like, okay,
your building's fit for business.
So we're fit for business, so we can move forward. And then there's something else, and you speak to that third party, and you figure that out. And there's a bunch of little baby steps and there really are baby steps, because you don't know where that next step is going to take you.
Yeah,
you just have to take the initiative. And with the reopening, we have a pretty large team working on that. For a small business, we're really lucky. I mean, big thanks to our office manager, accounts payable and receivable. Like, Katie has done so much, and it's just taken it by the reins, and has just helped us move forward, and it's been something I'm really appreciative of.
Well, let it be known, your restaurant, when it opened, which I believe was like in the fall of last year?
Yeah, we opened November 2017.
2017, I'm sorry, 2 years ago now. So it opened to wild success. I mean, it was
immediately a center of the community.
Yeah, it's been hopping since it opened, and really with no letdown. You've been busy. It's one of those great things that very few restaurateurs can just. It's almost like going viral on a video or so. It's like you can't totally predict that you're going to be wildly successful. There are certain things that may be. For some weird reason, Matt Kelly seems to just dither everything down to feel and seem so easy and so simple. It's like you're so rooted in your fundamentals that, like, the fact that you just do all the fundamentals correctly, it's like and your team's going to have confidence. This is going to be a great restaurant. And I just remember watching too. Is it fair to say that this might have been your biggest undertaking of restaurant to date?
Correct.
Correct. I think you're saying like this was going to possibly be one of your more personal restaurants, and like at this point you were able to put as much of you into this at that point?
and I think, also investing capital. That's
like
that's a
yours.
that's a big role with a restaurant.
Yeah.
And deciding, the details on what you're able to put in, because that stuff doesn't happen. It's not magic. It comes from somewhere. You definitely invest your capital into it, and making a kitchen that's large enough with the right equipment. Like, kitchens are still playgrounds. You get excited about buying certain types of equipment. I have tons of friends, like, before they open a restaurant, like, we want to go see what you got.
Right.
And we talk about it, and we're like, where did this idea come from? And it's, sometimes visiting another chef's restaurant somewhere. They had a cook for 1,200 people somewhere, and they're like, oh, yeah, this made it really easy. Or, we have such good control with this product. We can develop different recipes, and or when you grow up in Raleigh cooking for 20 years, and some of the equipment you use, everything gets it done. But cooking on certain brands and certain weight of equipment is really nice. Even pans. Like, how excited I get about, like, good pans? Still to this day.
Well, you've had tiny kitchens at pretty much all of the restaurants. Mateo
really
is a relatively large restaurant. You're pumping out a lot of covers. You do a lot of, you turn a lot of people. But you've got a small kitchen.
It's small. Yeah.
And Mother and Sons is the same way. For those that don't know, of course, they share a wall. They're right next door to each other, and then Lucky Deli is right next door there. So you have 3 of your own places, all on one little corner in Durham. And then, of course, St. James is really just like 2 blocks away. You can easily get to it. But with that, the kitchen was probably the largest kitchen that you've been able to work in.
Yeah, and I thought with seafood, having a raw bar, like cold storage, is critical, and having access and making that easy was something like that. That was an important investment in that project. Like, cleanliness is one of the most important. Probably the most important aspects of being a culinary professional. Like food and nutrition. Nutrition is probably number 1.
Yeah. And
cleanliness. Those are the 2. And the other things behind that are, follow that. Without that, it's a little, it's
everything else gets muddled.
Yeah.
It just occurs to me that, there's I think, Max, you hit on the word fundamentals. It's like where you base everything out, and that's maybe the reason why imagination for you is easy to put into application, I think, just to get back to that initial point, because we never kind of finished that. And the thought about, a lot of people have imagination. I have ideas and dreams and hopes all the time, but to actually put it into practice is a whole different skill set. So
it is, and it's challenging. It does, but I think I have some tools that I use to help me, especially when you come up with so many ideas.
Okay.
Write stuff down. Write it down.
That's the secret. Write it down.
It's the first step of getting something done.
Do you have
writing down?
Do you have a dream journal?
I don't really. I don't know. I guess I live my dream.
Where do you write it down? Do you write it in a notepad?
Yeah, I have 2. Well, I have a couple different things. I've been doing it for a long time, so I've kept up with. My first was like the black and white camouflaged composition.
Love those
books. Which I just found one of mine recently, which is pretty wild. I thought I had lost it. Actually, I thought it had been stolen, but I found it recently, and the joy it put on my face was huge, because you get to look at 2002 Matt.
Yeah.
Where you were.
It was like, holy shit.
How many brooding poems were you some songs you were going to write with The Cure inspired in the background?
Oh, no, it was mostly breaking down. Pictures of breaking down triggerfish and bluefin tuna tartars with avocado, stuff that was just very kind of passe. Yeah, just lists of dishes.
Yeah.
And, at Mateo, we still, the chef Nate Garantes and I, we still, we're not even a dent into dishes that we've talked about together.
Yeah. And that restaurant is how old now?
7 going into our 8th year.
Yeah.
But, there's books that haven't even been touched yet. And
that's inspiring.
And we keep that up. And, we tell the younger team to, write your ideas down, write your ideas down, come up with dishes, make them alive in your head, your mental mise en place. And because the more you work on something, the more you work on a dish, the more you work on your dream, the better it's going to get with practice. And you don't always have to, spend capital on that. You spend your own time dreaming, but managing those dreams by writing them down in your imagination is really effective. And you'll see how they evolve. Once you start practicing that, you'll see how
put them into practice.
It evolves.
Elaborate on one. I'm thinking that at some point this was a dream or a thought that you had written down, because the one I've eaten at your I think all of your restaurants, but also one of the best just culinary experiences I've had when Max and I were out at Chow Chow in Asheville. We got invited to this super cool secret. We felt part of the Cool Kids Club after hours, and you did this chalet kind of thing where felt like alpine cooking.
Raclette, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It was so simple but so freaking delicious. So talk about what you made and talk about where that thought came from.
So melted cheese.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm right.
Yeah.
That's so simple.
But that device is specifically made to do what it does, right? It's just a little rack that holds a wheel of cheese, or a half a wheel of cheese.
Yep, and it has a broiler. But the whole idea of raclette or melted cheese, you look at the Alps in the southern part of France, and their cheese and dairy is huge part of life there.
Right.
That's an everyday occurrence there.
Right.
And to bring something that you've experienced there to lighten anywhere in another part of the world, it's kind of fun and exciting. We used Fontina cheese there. This is my friend's restaurant, Cucina 24, celebrates Italian food, and that's his his new place there is like a cicchetti bar, which is like tapas for it's cicchetti. It's not tapas, but it's similar to what we do,
equivalent.
small plates. And
is that what I've never heard that term? So it's kind of to dumb it down. It's
I think it's
Italian
big
version.
big in Venice, I believe. Really big in Venice, like small plates, little in cafes and so forth, and you sit there very casual and drink some wine, have some delicious octopus, some melted cheese.
What were the little cigars that you made? Do you remember that?
Blood sausage.
That was blood sausage.
Blood sausage. Yeah, we put some homemade blood sausage and some brick dough, and we roll them up. We fry them and serve with, I think, maybe some preserved ramp ranch with some ash on it, just to whatever.
Yeah. I mean, visually it looked like a bunch of cigarettes in an ashtray. It looked awesome. It was fun.
And
I think people thought they were cigarettes, because I saw one person and try, and I was
smoking.
I was like, man, you're fucked up.
Thought it was a blunt.
It was a long day of drinking. That was probably me.
That was a long day of drinking. But you were shaped. But the bread also was. Was it just like a focaccia, or was it something different?
That bread is.
That bread was crazy.
That bread we get is from Loaf, and it's a great bakery in Durham where we buy all our baguettes for Matteo. And it was where tomatoes were still good, and we just spread some Duke's mayonnaise and put some grated tomato on top, and to kind of celebrate what we do at Matteo, which is having a Spanish heart and a Southern soul, and we also do it vice versa.
But this is the funny part. My wife, she's an excellent food photographer, and she and I both have the same iPhone, and we could both look at the exact same thing, and her photo is going to look professional and amazing, and mine's going to look like my thumb's in the middle of it or so. And it's the same scenario that if you said, hey, make me that thing that Matt Kelly made, I'd be like, yeah, here you go. And I'd go fine. I'd try to source the best bread I could, and then I'd put Duke's mayo on it, and then I'd try to do something with the tomatoes. I would, for one, overdo it, because I'd try to keep up, but I'm sure you underdid it. I'm sure you did very little.
I'm really good at underdoing it.
But that's the thing, the restraint. It's like what Amber Felizi said about her pizza sauce is essentially she just opens up the San Marzano tomatoes and crushes them, and then that's it.
That's pretty much it.
She's like, I might put some salt in there.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah. I go, you don't put some, whatever seasonings, and you don't put garlic in it. She's like, no. Just the tomatoes. It's fine. Everything else will fill that in, whatever you're putting on. you got a knack, Matt. You got a knack for what you do. And it was so simple. But that in itself, that little way to cap off that night at Chow Chow, it's like the inspiring thought of why we love this food and beverage industry, because you guys were all there. Like, Ashley put a plate down, and Chidi, I think, put a plate down, and Katie Button might have put a plate down. So it was like great chefs putting, it was almost like a potluck with all of you, but casually and not overdoing it at all. It was just subtle, and here you go. And it subtly ended up being probably the best experience we had of the whole trip, because it was so casual, and it wasn't like, hey, look what we're doing. It was just like, you hungry? I think you actually looked at me like, are you hungry, man? Keep eating. And I'm like, yeah, I want to eat.
It's an important part of what I do.
Yeah. Especially when that day did consist of quite an amount of alcohol consumption. So it was filling in things.
I know I keep going back to St. James, but I do want to know, with the devastation that happened there, what had to be done? What happened to the place after the explosion? How was it damaged?
There's our specific place. I mean, there's parts where we can say where we were lucky because our team was good. We were safe. And
were you there that day?
No, I was on the way. I was opening my door to go to the YMCA, and I got a phone call from one of my from our prep cook, and he said the building just exploded, and then my phone went click. And you probably, I mean,
what do you do with
this?
That
like, this will probably take 2 minutes to tell, but it processed. You process it so fast, and the first thing went through my head was I just killed 85 people because I know how many people were in the building at the time.
Yeah.
And the reason why, when we were in the new place,
you thought
everything else had been there for a long time, and he also, they said the building, and just thinking about my team and the people that were there, and never going to get a normal night's sleep again. That was it. And so I called back within like a second, and I said, is everyone okay? And Adam said, everyone is okay in our building, but he's like, not everyone's okay. He's like, so I was like, it didn't happen in our building. He was like, no. I was like, where are you? And he's like, I'm upstairs changing my shoes. And I said, get out of there. Like, just get out and run. He was in complete shock.
Yeah.
Like, the explosion was felt 15 miles away. Brinkley Farms felt the explosion. It flexed the glass at the Durham hotel. Like, it was a force to be reckoned with, something I've never been around and been very fortunate never have to deal with until that moment. But he was in complete shock. He passed one of our sous chefs. They've worked together from day one. He didn't even recognize him. It was just the shock and awe that was really big. But luckily, he was out and he was good. And, I wanted to get somewhere safe. So went in between the buildings at Brightleaf because, old buildings, we got to be thankful for those.
Yeah. Yeah. These
if it wasn't these old buildings, it would have been a lot different scenario. And I don't know, all my buildings are all my restaurants are in older buildings. I love working with something from the past and bringing it new without maligning it. But from that step, it was called my folks, made a post so everyone knew we were okay, and then call your insurance agent.
Yeah.
And, I called Robert, and he's like, everything's going to be okay. He's like, I'm going to see what your coverage is, and, got the details, and, there's a moment where you just don't know.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how you're going to take care of everyone.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I have multiple jobs.
Yeah.
I don't, not all my employees have multiple jobs, or like this thinking about how they're going to be displaced, thinking out how we're going to rebuild, if we rebuild, what the scenario is. You have to think of every option. And, from the damage that we had, to answer your question, our damage wasn't as physical. We would have probably been in a better position. It was more physical in other regards, but physically we were quite fine. It's really the tape, the bureaucracy, and working with other groups to figure out steps. There's a giant investigation that happens. That means a lot.
Right.
Like 2 people's lives were lost. So there was things that were so much more important than reopening the restaurant at the time. And you just, I don't know, you kind of just follow protocol. You follow your gut. You see what's right. You see what's wrong. You follow advice. You listen. You listen. And then, you get with your team. You make some decisions. You see what your options are. And those options are constantly changing.
Have you been able to, because I assume most of like the servers and the cooks and all that, they all had to find work somewhere. I mean, it's just like there's no restaurant. Are you able to bring any or some of them back? And what's that like?
I mean, we made a decision. This is like with insurance. We made a decision a long time ago. I think it was with Mothers to change our or to evolve like how we look at insurance and look at more of it as an investment. When you have a larger group of people working for you, you are you have to be the shepherd and make sure if you're not stacked like myself that you're able to take care of people if something does happen.
Yeah.
And so we had an insurance plan that was able to cover our staff just to help them not to be displaced. So that was something that, it's a plan, but it's also, as the owner, I know my conversation, they'll never have the conversation of being displaced in a place that will give them restitution. But I know at some point that I will be able to do that. So if I'm able to pay forward and make sure people who want to stick around and they are less displaced than they already are, I wanted to make that commitment. That was important to me because I know I can have a conversation at some point where I will receive some restitution for putting my best foot forward.
Nice. So so expect most of the staff when you do reopen?
I wouldn't say. I mean, you've got a core team.
On, right?
People move on. I mean, it's been 9 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be 9 months until we reopen. Like,
look at me.
People
I left before it even opened.
Yeah.
You were like, what happened to Max?
People want to. People want to move forward. They've got things they want to do. I know.
Sure.
I did.
Yeah.
But. We didn't know. Again, you don't know when you can reopen.
Yeah.
Like it's those baby steps going forward and learning when you're allowed to do something, and then you have to prepare yourself. You have to prepare your team. You have to build a new team. You have to get up to speed. But you have to let people know you are reopening.
And that's going to happen in January.
Yes. Going in for the second week of January.
I mean, obviously, like the sales guy or the old GM in me would have been like, can we not open up before, like in Christmas time, when that's when most restaurants make all their nut? But I guess it's just not viable.
I mean,
or would
part of it is
so
most people have their Christmas plans, like if your Christmas plan's already made.
Yeah.
Like if you're going into December and your boss says, hey, how's that Christmas party going planned? And you're like, working on it.
Hey, but St. James would have been a great plan B.
Yeah, you're going to get a delivery or to-go party at your office. You're not. Places are booked. My team is usually, like for Christmas, they're usually working 2 or 3 months before Christmas, and sometimes even further.
Yeah.
So, if someone wants to have their party at Mateo or Mothers and Sons, you have to look out pretty far in advance.
Yeah.
That's the way things work.
Because there's like one private dining room. It's not like there's multiple tables in the dining room.
Right.
You have one private dining room.
It occurred to me also that obviously this is horrific what happened at St. James, but there's one silver lining that came out of it, I will say, is that as a public, we kind of got to know you a little bit more. You've been sort of thrown into, because of this, you said you made a Facebook post, you let News and Observer, Indie Week do some articles, and you're here talking to us. So I guess that's, in a way, a little silver lining.
Correct. Yeah, I guess.
You going to start a podcast now, Matt?
I don't think so.
But I do have a question about
the internet doesn't even work at my house. I live
you live out in Bahama.
I live in Bahama. It would be.
No, we had this conversation way back because obviously I've known you for a bit, and I was like, Matt, would you ever want to be on the show? And I think you, to paraphrase, you were like, I do a lot of public things as owning these few places. I do. Like, my life is very public in a sense that I open my businesses up to the world and anyone can kind of come in. But when it comes to me as a person, I like to kind of keep that between me and my family. And I respected that. And that was like 2.5 years ago when I asked you to be on the show, and I told that to Matt Weiss. I'm like, had he said it any other way, I'd have been like, damn it, Matt Kelly doesn't want to be on the show. But you said it such a perfect way. I went, yeah, I respect your distance. And it wasn't until I kind of heard through people that maybe you would be on the show. I was like, great. And it was awesome. But I think this is great. I hope listeners out there are as excited as we've been listening to you and hearing what you do, because whether it's the St. James situation and all, but more just like who you are as a chef and what you do for the community. This is a story that needed to be told.
Well, I appreciate that, and being involved in social media, it gives me a easy way to be balanced. And people talk about trying to find balance in our industry, and well, then just not everyone needs to know what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm content. I mean, most of the time I'm not really doing anything exciting. I don't have cats.
Because that would be super exciting.
That's the obligatory pick. And I don't know, enjoying things in the moment with my friends and my family. Now, it has a lot of value, though. Sure. And you see that, and I think sometimes the lack of it could get misconstrued as not being appreciative, but I am very appreciative. I just, for me to have a good balance, and it's like to turning off and hanging out with some friends and not documenting it. And it's, I don't know, so far it's worked pretty well.
I think that's also the Rochester in you. It's like, you Rochester people seem to keep it close to the vest, a little bit mysterious, and never know quite what's going on.
Well, yeah, there's not much to talk about out there.
Wait a minute, that's it. We've been 61 minutes, almost 62 minutes, and we just now found out that Matt Kelly is from New York.
Well, you've been jibber-jabbering, I didn't have a chance to say.
Yeah, that's always the joke, is that someone's from New York, because they'll tell you as soon as you
but Rochester
Western New York is a different...
Yeah, I mean, shame.
They're very outgoing in Buffalo and Rochester, but to tell you where they are and where they live...
Well, Matt, I'm going to out you real quick on something that I thought was pretty awesome as what a chef would do, and it kind of coincides with towards the end as we wrap up the show. Proof Alcohol Ice Cream is a sponsor of our show, and we always like to give somebody some ice cream as they're on their way out. It's got alcohol inside the ice cream. Think differently about dessert. 7% alcohol, 14% proof. But what you did was fascinating. When we were talking before we got here, you just went, I had these little sample packs, and you went, I'm going to throw that in my coffee. And you popped that in before we got our interview going. What a genius way to start the show. Maybe that's why you're so relaxed and chill.
That might be it.
But before you get out of here, we have this.
It was
awesome,
delicious.
Yeah, it's great, right? And what a fun way to do that. That's an awesome. Yeah, just take a scoop of proof.
What flavor did you have?
It's chocolate.
Yeah, I think
chocolate. It was kind of like a little white, like adult White Russian.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
So before you get out of here, we'll send you on your way. We have a little proof freezer.
I mean, they're all adult White Russians, right? I mean,
yeah. What else would you have?
Yeah, kitty White Russian. It's just called chocolate milk.
The starter kit.
Yeah. So go to proofalcoholicecream.com. Follow them on Instagram. Check it out. You can get it at Triangle Wine Company and many other places as well. But we'll send you on your way. We just got, this week, they just delivered us the new apple pie moonshine, which is their new flavor. It's delicious. I took it home for the weekend. That was so fun. But you take something with you before you leave. Matt, what else do you have before we get out of here?
I just want to say, Chef Matt, thank you so much for coming in. I know I, for one, am looking to the reopening of St. James very much, and hopefully you, and some time, will come back, because there's so much left to your story that we didn't get in and is intriguing. So until then, everyone go to St. James when it's open, go to Mothers and Sons, go to Lucky's, go to Mateo's.
Ben Ridge.
And Baton Rouge, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How could I forget? Jeez. And you will eat and drink very merrily.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.